Hi, everybody, and welcome to My Perspective Mondays. Yes, I'm so glad to see you. Happy Memorial Day. It's good to be here. And today we're going to talk about should parents be responsible for their children's actions? Now, this is a very good topic in lieu of some things that we had coming up recently. But we're going to start this conversation off. Should parents be responsible for their children's action? What about you, Jackson? What you say?
Personally, to an extent, I would say no, because after a while, nobody's just going to tell you. You're just going to experience the repercussions of your actions, and then you're going to have to deal with that in the long run. They started doing that with us in school. If you fought, you didn't go to ISS. You got arrested and sent to jail.
Now think about that thing now. So you're saying that whatever little Shania and little Johnny do, they don't have to be the parents can just slide on by and they don't have no responsibility
Mm,
at all. Mark?
Well, let me ask this first. All right, let's get sort of some ground rules,
Yeah,
at least to start off. What? How do we define a child here?
right. Because
Under
that's
Elementary
no.
school, teenager, adult. What?
I think the age tells it itself. Anybody preteen, I consider a child. 12 years and older. 13. Once you have teen in your name, I'm a little less leaning on the parent, and it depends on the situation because the situation makes up for a lot of that. What are we actually asking the parent to be accountable for? For instance, if your child is 9, like Mark is saying, and they get in a fight in school, is different when your child is 16 and knows way better and getting in a fight in school.
Interesting.
Well, I just think that if it's the case, and I know it's somewhat inevitable. Both are inevitable. At some point, excuse me, we're all held individually responsible for what we do. But also, at some point, whether it's fair or not, parents get blamed for what their kids do. And in a lot of cases, well, if that's the case, there are a couple hundred million parents in this country that are in real trouble. And pretty much everyone who's ever mothered or fathered a child. But in some cases, you can see that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Okay, but in so many cases, the things the child does do not reflect what the parent teaches them. So, as John said, it's
You,
situational.
you know what you said? Because we have seen, and everybody, if they've paid attention growing up their entire lives, I have seen, and I know we don't know everything that goes behind the scenes in someone's house, but we're talking about your close neighbors that you might have a little more relationship, especially like we used to back in the day. I've seen some awesome parents raise a couple of assholes, and I've seen some family situations where the parents were just dreadful pieces of you know what, and somehow that child
Yeah,
becomes such a prosperous person. So, I mean, of course, your chances of growing up better is better when your parents are uh, better, do have better parenting, but it's not a guarantee.
of course
You
not.
know,
I,
every
I
serial killer wasn't raised by an abuser.
True. I just think parents, to some degree, have to have some responsibility to some degree up to some age. I know when you're a grown, rusty person, I don't believe you should fault your parents but at some way or another. What did they teach you? Did they teach you to be the way that you are, or did they not teach you? So, I mean, they get upset with parents for not letting their children go to school. I mean, they are responsible, and it just depends. I mean, it's a kind of a tough situation there.
Well,
Well, let
sorry, John, the justice system and the social welfare system, they recognize their limits. And I don't know all the details here, and again, it's situational there too, to where they try to recognize when a parent is clearly being negligent or clearly being abusive. But those are almost situational calls. But say not letting a child go to school, not trying to enforce any kind of rules like that, versus, your child got in trouble today, and therefore we're gonna bring the hammer down on you. And first off, again, I hate to go back to the criminal justice perspective here, but our criminal justice system is built on the individual, and an individual is held account for what they do. Now, if someone contributes to that misbehavior, they're held accountable. But we don't really believe in our justice system, and as a society, we don't believe in vicarious punishment, and that is punishing someone for what someone else does.
Mhm.
And I think that's a good thing. But invariably, though, I have to say this, though, that parents don't hesitate to take the credit when a child does something well. But what about when a child does something bad? Oh, your kid's so great. Yeah, you did a good job raising a kid. Oh, your kid's an a-hole. So,
It does depend on the level of bad. Again, if my child is in trouble for skipping school, that's one thing. If my child is in trouble because he's selling drugs in the school, that's a whole different other thing. So I think the level of what was the offense, or what was the problem, we have to be specific. I know we're talking in generic terms, but it gets very specific. Like I just gave two very different specific instances.
Well, let's take on the challenge that Mark said about the kids selling drugs in school. Okay. Now, I will not blame.
Did Mark say that?
No, John
Yes.
said that.
It's okay. Listen, me and Mark, we look so much. We get confused for each other literally all the time.
He's my evil twin.
Yeah, on opposite day.
Wait, why I gotta be the evil one? What? Wait, no. Hold on. I know we're breaking up the show, but what makes me the evil twin, Mark? Why am I? You're the one with the mad scientist hat.
I would think you'd be more concerned about being. You should be more concerned about being my twin than you should be an evil.
Wow.
That's a lot worse.
Wow.
Oh my God. All right. So go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, if
No, you know.
Well, I really do, but if you really it depends on the way you train your child. If
Does it?
I to some degree, I will, sometimes I'm gonna be honest. Some kids are just downright rotten to the bone. They rotten to the point. They get away with stuff, and you raise them that way. When they get older, they're gonna be rotten, stanky rotten, and so they're gonna do some stupid stuff. I mean, and that's not always the cause, though. But
I think one of the ways to limit that is, I used to always say this: there's a difference between a good mom and dad and a good parent. Everybody thinks those are together. No, good mom and dad, you birthed me, you raised me, you make sure I eat, you make sure I get clothes on my back, you make sure I go to school, you do the bare minimum. Great, because you birthed me. A parent is that teacher, that nurturer, that cultivator, that motivator. That's the parenting part. And a lot of kids who go awry, because every kid that gets picked on or bullied doesn't turn out to be a mass murderer. When kids are trying to speak and show themselves, or they're going through issues, there's a lot of parents that will just spank them and say, do what you're told. Not understanding there's a behavior issue going on. Not understanding that kids get stressed just like adults, right? And when you throw them to the side and do that, because they're just kids, they seek knowledge from the wrong places, because there will always be someone who's accommodating. Well, come on over here. Nobody loves you. Come on over here. Yeah. And then that person is feeding them and teaching them everything and has their attention because they showed that they cared about what that kid had to say.
And they look to other peer groups for affirmation as well, John. If they have difficulties in school because of a learning disability of some sort that no one recognizes, whether it's ADHD or dyslexia, they're better recognizing that kind of thing now than in the past. Mm-hmm. You're just stupid, you're just lazy, and so forth.
Right. You're just a little slow.
Yeah, they'll look for affirmation, or they'll look for something they can do well. And the one thing they can do well is something they shouldn't be doing. But I have to say this in defense of parents, though, and that is, it's for people involved in a dysfunctional relationship, whether it be a parent-child or a spousal situation or boyfriend-girlfriend. You're the last one to know what's going on, because you're in the eye of the hurricane and everyone around you can see what's going on. They know your child's a drug dealer. They know your child is this, your child is that, but you're too close to the situation. And I think there should be some consideration taken of that. That it's difficult
Well,
to judge when you're so close.
Hold on, Mark, because those are the ones, not saying all the time, but a lot of times they're not listening. It's not that they're too close. They're not paying it. I gave an example a couple of shows ago about some of my male friends when we were younger. They'd have daughters, and their daughter would come in to talk to them about boys, and they'd just fly off the handle. You don't talk to me about boys. That's not what you need to be. So now he's the last to know everything.
There you go.
That was
That's
his
somewhat.
Yeah, that was his opening. That was her giving the opening for dad to talk to her about
That's
boys.
right.
And so, and I say that because that can go into a lot of other things, you know. And again, a defensive parents, you're working all day, you get home, you're tired, and your kid starts yapping, and you're just like, I get it, but I mean, you had him.
That's true. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's your chance.
Nate Jackson just has this look on his face, like, I don't care what none of y'all talking about, just slap it.
It's not even that. You're bringing up very valid points. And one of the main things running through my mind nowadays is people like to get the wires crossed. Some
Mhm.
people confuse giving someone privacy with not being involved. If you give somebody too much privacy, you're opening the door for them to do anything that they want. And you're
Exactly.
being oblivious and ignorant towards it. And that's how we get a lot of issues that we have today. But if you're involved, you know what they're talking about, what they're doing, not necessarily what's going on behind closed doors, but it's still giving you a leg up to ask more questions.
That's getting right back to what we're talking about parents. You know, are they responsible? If you have this kind of like what John said about a teen, if you're 18 and lower than that, you know, you're not become of age, you're not grown, so to say, you're living in my house, I'm going to find out what you're doing. I want to know what you're up to. I'm not just going to, you know, I have the right to go and check up on you, because when it comes down to it, people are going to be looking at me. Why, even if I don't be held criminally responsible, they're going to look at me with, Lord, she showed didn't teach them right. You know, so
Mhm.
I want to know what you're doing.
Well, that's what you're saying. Is I'm not disputing what you're saying, but what, especially parents with multiple kids who haven't figured it out, that's the only thing that I get it. On the first one, you're figuring it out. There's books, but there's no perfect way to be a parent. But again, there's a way to finding that out other than the old school break down the door, bust it in, start cursing, and ask me what I'm doing. You know, there's ways to get information, and a lot of times everybody, you know what, the thing that bothers me is parents somehow have amnesia from when they were teenagers. Whether you know it or not, there were times you were trying to tell your parents something verbally or through your actions, whether you knew it or not. And it's
I
up to
see
that
what you're
parent to see that and not have their head in the clouds. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
a lot of signs. Kid to parent relate. All these relationships we're talking about, friendships, marriage, kid. These are all relationships, and in any type of relationship, both people have to be paying attention to what's going on.
I agree. I agree that they should, but you know, it kind of reminds me. I remember what somebody said one time. He said, you know, when his parents, you know, back in the day, the parents would not knock you out. Okay, so you cross-eyed, so they slap you. Oh, okay, those eyes gonna get back to where they're supposed to be. I'm sorry, but I did not
No,
think about.
I know what
I'm
you're
sorry,
talking
but
about.
it's funny, but it's not funny. You know, I know people that have definitely have been abused as a child. They have been overbeat, overwhooped, whatever, and you would think they would be like mass murderers or serial killers, but instead they're just as nice and sweet, very polite, have good manners. So
Well, I'll be careful with that because there's too many people that think because they beat the hell out of the kid and they turned out good, that was why.
Yeah,
And
I
we
agree.
learned that's more often creating violence in the kid because it you know, that's not the appropriate way to always teach something, especially
that's true.
on first instant. I always say this: if the whoopings were so effective, why did we keep getting in trouble? Is it because we're evil, or is it
Yeah.
because we're kids and teenagers?
Yeah.
So by definition,
Teenagers.
every time you did something, you beat the hell out of them or just whooped them, but then they got in trouble again. The moral of the story is kids and the teenagers are going to get in trouble. Now, the
True.
level of trouble is where we're getting at. And that's where what we're talking about. You know, if you're a parent who buys your 16-year-old a gun and they take that gun and go harm someone, you should be held accountable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If
Because
you
you're held
one
accountable
thing-
for what you're doing, not what the child is doing.
But
Right.
one thing, how did they get the money? Did you give it the money? Money to
No,
them
that's
for
what I just said. The
their
parent
birthday?
bought the gun and gave it to the kid as a present. You know,
Interesting.
Well,
Yes.
that's it's not quite the same thing, but it's akin to giving a child liquor and saying, "Well,
Mhm.
okay, you know, here you go," and then saying, "I'm not responsible for you getting drunk and passing out or whatever."
right?
But, you know,
Right.
so in those cases, the parent is responsible for what the parent did, and that led to what the child did. But if
And
the
so
parent
then
had
you're
no part of what the child did, such as, you know, going and picking a fight with someone, which some pacifist parent would never do and never endorse, you know, you shouldn't hold the parent accountable.
No,
But back
you
to that
I got
whipping,
a lot to say
whipping.
about this.
You
Just
shouldn't.
one
My
thing,
Go
Jay,
ahead.
and I'll turn it back over to you. I mentioned this before. It goes back to what John said, and that is there's a thing on social media now that says it shows a man spanking a boy, and it
Mhm.
says if we had more of this, we'd have less of this, and it shows a delinquent, a hood, you know, blah blah. In other words, the key to the solving the crime problem among juveniles and young men is corporal punishment, and I just don't believe that's the case.
Well, it's never been an absolute thing to work. Beatings have been around since beatings have been around, and it's not like all of this stuff started happening in 2000.
No,
We were talking about school shootings the other day, and if you go look up on Wikipedia or any other source, I know Wikipedia has gotten a lot better from when I went to college, when professors used to yell at us, "That's not a source." They show you these school shootings from far back of 200 years.
Yeah.
You start looking at stuff in 1887. Father, husband thinks wife is cheating, goes to school, shoots principal, shoots teacher, shoots two other people at the school. And this is like 1882.
yeah, just the high power weapons now, though.
Kid took
Sure.
and there were so many where kids took their parents' gun to school and was playing around and shot someone, and they always have it written up as accidental discharge in school, even when the person went there with the intent to harm. So going back to, I don't know, I went off the tangent, is my favorite person, Judge Judy, used to always say, if you supply them with the instrument in which the issue happened, you are just as responsible.
Absolutely.
Hey, before we go to Jay,
Absolutely.
I just want to say I think we need a therapy session for John because he says one of his favorite people is Judge Judy. God help him. Sorry,
I
Jay.
like Judge Judy.
Hey, ain't
Straight
gotta
to
help
the point.
me. I'm
It's
good.
brutal, but you get the
Maloney,
job done. You can't argue with results.
she cut that BS out.
Go for it, Jackson.
All right, now I'm gonna dive straight head first into this, and I'm gonna cut straight to the point like a knife. All of this boils down to whether or not you're going to sit down with the individual and make sure that they understand you. Hearing something versus comprehending it are two completely separate things. You can hear something, but it can go in one ear and out the other. Are you comprehending it the way that you need to, however? And that's whether or not you're taking in the information that you're hearing and properly digesting it. You can miscomprehend something and think that it means something completely different. However, if you comprehend it the proper way because somebody explained it to you, that's different. In the instance of giving a child a firearm, my mom's trained all of us to use guns. I know how to unload, discharge the firearm, all of that. However, she made sure to sit down with us in a one-on-one conversation and say, this is not a toy. I've understood that from a very young age.
Or the tool.
Somebody else, on the other
your
hand,
emotions.
might not because they haven't had that conversation.
I love
That's
what listener Vale said. The question you ask yourself as a parent is, am I instilling fear or am I instilling love in my child? That's a great thing, because I always talk about, you can remember the spankings you got, and if you go back and play them in your head and you hear the anger, is like, was this about me leaving the spoon in the sink, or is this about your crappy day at work? Like, which one is this about?
I said both.
Yeah, because when he says instilling love, it's always funny. We used to say this growing up. Go to any neighborhood. If you want to find the baddest kid, look for the preacher's child or the cop's child or the school teacher or principal's child. They were always the wildest in most neighborhoods. Why is that?
That's what they say. You know, that's what they say. But I don't. Maybe sometimes.
But why is it? But why
you
is
can
that?
get. I think you can get caught up into your service, your religion to the Lord, that you forget to look at your children. You know, so that's just like anything else. Like these people, the children have gone out and done these crazy things. They may have given them the fancy gifts. They may have given them all the money in the world. They may have, you know, some parents just may be working and they don't have the time seemingly to take time with their children. But it will all show because the child is the one that gets neglected and gets into some stuff. So it doesn't matter.
All right, but I got a question.
Ask it again. Go ahead.
That nonsense that I just said. Why do it's a stereotype, but why does that stereotype? You know, like some stereotypes, you see them a lot, and you go, "God, it's a stereotype," but I keep seeing it. Why is it that you used to keep finding that the preacher's kid, or the cop's kid, or the teacher's kid, or the principal's kid are the baddest kids in the neighborhood?
Well, first off, it is a stereotype, and stereotypes are very often wrong. But I think of a preacher I knew. He had a daughter and a son. The daughter was my age. The son was a tad younger, and the daughter was the epitome of the bad preacher's kid. The son was just the opposite. So it seems very often people go in kind of one of two polar opposite ways. But I think that I've had people that get PKs, you know, preacher's kids, say that it is very tough being a PK, particularly in a small congregation where everyone watches everything you do and so forth. It's really unfair to the child to impose the parents' choice of vocation on them and their standard of conduct. I heard a story once of a police officer, and this is not a story, it's true, but a police officer's child, he got in a fight at school, the way kids do. The dad was called to the school, and he spanked the child. I'm not going to address corporal punishment here. What I didn't like, though, was when I was told the police officer told the son before he spanked him, "Here I am, a police officer, and you're doing this. You're disgracing my badge," that type of thing. That part I thought was unfair. Now, if he wants to spank the child because he's done something bad, okay. But, you know, Dad, he didn't pick your profession. You picked it, not him.
Well, that's the thing I was talking about. The spanking is intensified based on your feelings and what you got going on instead of what my actual punishment should have been.
Right.
That's where you get the overreaction. And I know it's a stereotype, but even though you keep running into this, but you don't think it has anything to do with because of when certain families where the parent is more, their job is an authoritarian figure?
Sometimes, yes, no doubt.
Yeah. It can be. It can
or
be
high
that.
Jobs. Yeah.
How about
It can
Jackson?
be, but
Jackson, what do you
Jack.
say, Lynn? I cut him off while ago.
Yeah. But mostly the reason as to why you see a lot of those individuals with those types of parents being the wildest ones is because those types of parents like to clamp down, per se. A lot of people don't like being clamped down on, so it inspires them to rebel. And when you do something like that and you get caught, you want to voice your opinion as to why you did it, but somebody's not necessarily trying to hear what you have to say. It's listen to what I have to say, do what I tell you.
Well, it has to be that. I mean, it has to be like that until you are an adult. So it is. I mean, if you've grown enough, you don't want to listen, get on out there and get your own house and then do what you want to do. I'm just saying, I just, that's just like president's kids. Like, what about president's kids? They don't do nothing. I mean, they have to, according to their parent occupation, they have to be. They can't go out there and shame the president. They got to be nice.
Okay, they can't. But I'm not comparing my dad that worked at the library to the president of the United States, and I don't picture Barack and Bill Clinton and George Bush chasing their kids around with a belt in the White House. I don't picture that as a thing that's happening. Okay. It's not that, and I can hear that the defiance in your voice. It's not that he's saying.
I
I think
mean,
you're hearing a parent should just let a kid do whatever the hell they want and stay out of my room. I don't think that's what Jackson's getting at. It kind of is what we're all talking about, that explaining things instead of just ruling with the iron fist. Maybe
I
the
agree.
reason I was a virgin until I was 23 and was waiting on marriage and didn't get a bunch of girls pregnant in high school is because sex education wasn't taught to me in class. It was taught to me by my dad at like 12 years old, and I understood the problems with doing things before I was ready. Instead of that scenario I brought up earlier, when the kid wants to talk about it, you tell them you're 13, that shouldn't be on your mind. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Because now that 13-year-old has just, remember I said, I'm giving you hints. I am inquisitive about sex. I just gave you the hint. And now you turned me away. So you think my inquisitiveness is going to go away because you didn't tell me my answers? No, they're going to go find out from the wrong people.
That boils down, and I'm happy that he pointed that out.
How many things are boiling down today, Jay?
Right.
Everything's
I
boiling
want
down.
to simplify it though, because the audience got to stay on track with us, as well as I want to make sure that my co-stars are on the same page with me. It boils down to where if you tell somebody not to do something that they want to do, it makes them want to do it more, and you didn't tell them why.
Well, yeah, there you go. I was just about to say, well, yep, because you did it. Just Mark Lissette and me, we're older than Jay. I don't know. Well, Jay, you live in the country, so it's still kind of old school. We grew up with when you want an explanation, not go clean your room. Why? I'm not talking about that. You nip that in the bud. But when we're asking questions and it's like, well, that's because that's the way it is because I said so. Because I'm an adult and you're a child. How does anybody learn from that?
Nobody can learn from that. I mean, I know kids do stuff for attention's sake, according to the comment, kids can do stuff, for attention's sake, but I think you should explain it to your children. But I wonder how many people out there listening, or looking at this live, did a spanking, I'm not talking about punishment or abuse. Did correction or spanking, did it help you along the way or did it hurt you? Just put it in the comment section. But I agree. When you can explain something to a child, you should. You should do that. That's wrong just to start hitting them. And if they're coming to you to talk to you, you should listen. You should listen. Absolutely.
I'm gonna answer that question you said to put in the chat. I can tell you this, and I'm being honest. I don't remember any of the 9,000 spankings my mom gave me did anything. It was always when my grandfather would sit me down and explain stuff to me is when I wouldn't do it again, or when I realized I had done enough. Because
wow.
when you're a kid, that's your first time in life where you learn how to weigh risk versus reward. We think about that at work, risk management and all of that, but that starts when you're a kid. I know I'm not supposed to have that cookie, but I really want that cookie. If I get that cookie, she's going to spank me 4 times with a belt and send me to my room. Okay, it's worth it. I'm getting the cookie. You start that at an early age. You weigh your risk versus your reward. I'm 10 minutes late from curfew. Well, I already know I'm gonna get a whooping, so I might as well have fun.
Yeah.
An hour late.
Make it worth it. Yeah.
I feel
Wow.
I'm gonna whoop it for 10 minutes. If I'm gonna whoop it, I need some good old fashioned 2 more hours.
I see you. I would have told you up.
Let me pose a question to Jay. Okay, I want to follow up something he said a while ago.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take what you said a while ago to a bit of an extreme. All right. I think you said something like, if you tell a child no to something they want to do, you only want to make them do it more. Now, does that mean that
You missed the part of that.
What was it?
Want to do it more, and that's what happens when you're not explaining to them why.
All right. Okay. Well, okay. So maybe I missed that part, but Jay, does that mean, and I know the answer is no, does that mean that you never say no to a child? You never stop them from doing something that they shouldn't do?
No. Well, yes.
No.
Shut up.
That's
Or
not
anybody
what
can
that-
answer. I'm just picking on Jay. because he's not talking to you.
Right. That's not what that means in the slightest. But some people feel as though they don't have to justify themselves to children because, parent to child or adult to child, people don't think that correlates. Because sometimes you'll say, don't do that. They go, why? Because I said so. Sit down and tell them, don't do that because you can get hurt. That's the last thing that you want, right? You don't want to get hurt.
Right. And I think as a parent, like, someone said their reputation is more important than a cookie, which I can understand that. I mean,
reputation. I'm 6 years old. I ain't got no reputation.
I guess when a parent takes their lifetime building up their reputation, and then you got a kid want to go out there and like, for instance, want to go out there and shoot up the school. My goodness, we went from a cookie extreme. To oh my god, from cookie to shooting. Now, when I said take the cookie, I was talking about in the house, not like stealing a cookie. Right. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out.
I don't know if Clarence knew what I was talking about.
I would like to point out we went from chocolate chips to emptying clips.
Yeah.
I Listen, took it. Like, wait.
We went from chocolate chips.
That's like saying, milk is a gateway to vodka. You get that kid too much chocolate milk. You're leading them.
You have got to have some kind of a guidance, you got to give a child a guidance. And you know what? If that's humiliating, embarrassing to put that shame on your family.
Oh my God!
To do whether you steal something, whether you shoot up the place, or whether you kill somebody, whatever. You're gonna bring embarrassment on not only your parents, but on your whole family.
You're talking about a wide range of between stealing,
shoplifting,
and killing somebody.
It's embarrassing to do that.
Yes, it'd be very. I have to say, I agree with one thing. Yes, if one of my children shot up a school, I'd be a tad embarrassed.
But I'm not laughing about that, by the way.
I'm not either, but
it goes without saying.
Something and killing somebody is two different things.
Yes,
it goes without saying to be embarrassed. But you know what? Some of the people who have done it, their parents weren't embarrassed, because if you've met some of their parents, then you
apple didn't fall from a tree. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that everybody, they love to say, the kids are over. This is the thing that annoys me, because we have so much media access and we have the internet. Everyone acts like everything going on is just happening now. Kids are just being bad now. It's a new thing. Mental health is new. Depression is new. Anxiety is new. All of this stuff isn't new. It's just that nobody cared. If your kid had anxiety or ADHD, you spanked them and told them to sit down every time.
There you go. You spanked it out.
But it didn't stop the ADHD, and oftentimes it created a different problem.
Yeah.
You know what? I think children nowadays are not getting the discipline. And I'm not necessarily talking about the spanking per se. The discipline, they're not getting the discipline. They're disrespectful to grown folks, and they're even disrespectful to themselves. So
I don't did you hold that.
When did that not start? That's always been a thing.
Yeah. I don't hold that either. I mean, like in the times that I've been associated with John the past year or so, where I've met so many people that I would not have met before, particularly young guys like Jackson, and all of them, to a person, have been so respectful of me and so nice. And I work with university students and say, "Oh, kids are all bad nowadays." Most of them are a lot nicer than I was at that age. So I don't know if I really hold with that, though, that kids are worse today. I don't know.
Mark, we always say that's every generation's job to say the kids today are going to hell. They're taking us to hell.
My parents said that about my generation. They may have been right.
There's just as many bad kids. When Mark was in high school, like bullying, it was acceptable back then that the jock bullied the people who weren't jocks in school. So it wasn't looked at as a problem. And now when it's done, it's like, oh my God, these kids are so. No, they've been doing that. Yeah. But it was acceptable back then to take a kid and stick his head in the toilet, because it was survival in the mysterious. He needs to man up.
Back then, I agree with you, John. Back then, you could get bullied. They didn't go up there and shoot up the whole school because somebody bullied them. And I was
no,
bullied when I
no.
was in school. I was bullied, and that was a pretty bad feeling. But I didn't go up there and,
You
and,
said
and slap.
go ahead.
Yes,
Listening.
I was bullied when I was in
No,
school.
no, no,
Well, I
no. I
was
was
too.
talking about
Yeah.
the other thing. You said they don't go, and I keep telling everybody about these shootings.
I
You
mean,
better go
yeah.
look at. You better go look at the history of school shootings and mall shootings and store shootings. This is
We
not
had
a
a
new
we,
phenomenon in America.
when I was in ninth grade, we had a guy who got bullied by another guy. He went home and got a gun and came back. And fortunately, he got intercepted by some teachers outside in the parking lot. But had they not intercepted him, it would have gone on there too.
Yeah, this is not a new thing. Go look at
I
the
know it's not.
timelines.
I know it's not new, but it seemed like it's.
You know,
I
to me,
guess maybe it's known more for
You
the
can
media.
you can see it faster if when well here we go, all telling our age. Jackson's gonna be like, you guys are old. In the 80s, I'm in elementary school, Miami, Florida. If someone got shot in Green Bay, Wisconsin, I didn't hear about it.
right.
I didn't hear about it. If
That's
somebody got
true.
shot in Seattle, I didn't hear about it. Now, if somebody gets shot, it's on the ticker. Whatever you're watching,
Just
whatever
because
news
it's right next
station
door
you're
to
watching,
you now. Yeah.
it's on the ticker, and you see it when you wake up in the morning and you go to TikTok or Instagram or any news feed of something. Things pop up on my YouTube. Pop up. Man strangles wife in Dallas, Texas. Why would I be told that living in Miami? I wouldn't. But we have access to everything now, so everything looks so amplified. Even though every statistic has shown the decrease in violent crimes, and crimes amongst kids are going this way.
And the same
But
with
the
incarceration rates too.
But the reason why we think it so much is because we have so much access to it.
I think one thing that has changed, John, and that is I mentioned it a while ago briefly. There with the school shootings, you're right, they're nothing new, but the access to the high-powered weapons in some cases, that's been a
Exactly.
force multiplier in some cases.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual instances, yeah, you're right. It's just we see it now, see it so much. It's the same thing about people always saying crime is going up when most of the time it's not. It might be in your neighborhood, in your city, but not everywhere.
Oh, not. It's been steadily going down for decades, but we just keep getting fast access to everything.
And you're right.
All right,
Your home
Jack-
city of Miami is
I
much better now
officially
than
have
it
a lot
was.
to say.
Oh, you don't want to? Yeah, Miami in the 80s and 90s is compared to today. Oh my
Go
God.
for it, Jack.
All right, so back with the whole everything was acceptable back then. I actually overheard a conversation with some teachers, mind you not, that said they hear and see everything that goes on. If you hear and see everything that goes on, why do you let it go by up until it's such a big issue?
I just
If you
told
could
you.
have stopped the bullying before it hit the fan, why didn't you?
That's a good question.
I have this exact experience. Somebody was bullying me, and I got sick of it. The first thing that I went and did was tell the teacher.
Tell
She
the
said, "Oh,
teacher.
you'll be perfectly fine. I think it'll toughen you up." I said, "Bet." I asked you to do something about it the first time. Now I'm gonna do something about it. The next time he said something to me, he got cussed out. She said, "Jackson." I said, "Yeah, and what about it?"
Exactly.
He got quiet.
Exactly.
You know, we're not,
Catch-22.
when it says the mass shootings have increased over that. Yeah, but we're not really arguing the increase or decrease. I'm just saying this is not a new thing. More or less, it's still happening. One a year is too much.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
3 last year and 6 this year, and 9 next year, and then 2 the next year. We're gonna celebrate that it was only 2 this year. Hey, last year was 9. It's only 2. We're doing better. 1 is too much. But I'm saying again, this isn't a new thing. Older school parents hate newer school parents because their kids have a little more freedom and they think it's going to be terrible. When yet, in overall, statistically, kids are smarter than I was at my age. They're growing up better with more advantages. They learn things in school that they would that you'd have to go to a special program when I was in school to go learn, and they're doing it in the curriculum of high school. So what we do with kids today, though, is when we were growing up, we weren't measured by our worst counterparts. We weren't. It started in certain eras. In this era, especially, we judge all the kids on the terrible kid. If you see one kid talk back against his to his mom in Target, all of a sudden these kids,
Yeah.
and we just label them all. All the kids are terrible. If all the
Oh.
kids
You know
are
what?
terrible, then all the parents suck.
The fact
That's
that he's
interesting, John, because there's some, I think the kids technology wise are definitely more smarter than we were, but seem like common sense ain't quite there
I think
sometimes.
that's a bad
You know,
narrative.
they just
I think that's a bad narrative. I take
it
that
is,
back
but
to-
to me, it's a
I
lot of
think-
that stuff.
I'm never
is
sure
gone.
what the phrase "common sense" means.
Yeah, I take that back to that thing. We're still judging them off of what we see from the worst person. We get mad when people do
No,
that.
I'm talking about
racially.
for
But-
off themselves. I've
No.
had some incidents, where you can ask it. Back then in those days, they would teach us how to count money back to people. Now they got to get on the computer. Sometimes it's not always.
Again, we're using the lowest denominator. I've seen people do that when they go to a grocery store and the cash register breaks down, and then the person can't do it with their hand. Let's not judge the one person that's working at the grocery store in the summer that can't count change back, because there's like 30 kids in my apartment that can do that in a heartbeat. Again, we're still measuring by when we have those 1 to 2 instances, and we're like, all these kids. As a person who coaches kids to adults for the last 5 years of my life, I'm going to tell you, I've coached just as many 40-year-olds that have less common sense than the 10-year-olds I've coached.
Wow.
John? Okay, you struck a nerve there, because every time you train me, and I'm way over 40, I feel so stupid when I watch these, literally, Jackson and Lisette, 6-year-olds doing stuff the first time flawlessly, and John has to take me aside and give me a special tutoring session on how to stand or how to walk. So I just want to tell you, you really hurt with that one. That's all I'll say.
Oh.
Oh my God. I don't know what that was in reference to. I popped it up there. A little book. I popped it up there a little late. Again, like I'll say what I was just about to say for final thoughts, because I feel like what I was just about to say was for my final thoughts. We gotta stop. It's never gonna stop, but every generation with this whole, and if you just, like I said, don't have amnesia as an adult. Think back when you were a teenager. Mark tells it all the time when he was a teenager. Those damn Beatles and those damn Rolling Stones, we're going to send them straight to hell. All you guys are pot-smoking losers in the 70s. This generation's going to kill us.
Yep.
My generation, I was a teenager in the 90s. We were supposed to cause the end of the world. And now I see the same knucklehead friends who were teenagers with me talk about how stupid kids are. And I'm like, bro, you don't remember how stupid you were when you were 14? You were dumber than both of your kids. I'll tell my friends that. You were dumber than both your kids. So it's just the nature of the beast.
Okay, what about you, Jackson? What's your final thoughts?
Well, I wasn't giving final thoughts. I was just saying I almost gave final thoughts.
Okay, you almost gave them. Well, I'm not saying that kids are stupid. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that when we had to learn things the hard way, we didn't have the calculator. We had to actually know these different formulas and stuff. We had to remember that. We had to know this stuff.
Know the math that Lisette.
I can only go by some students that I know.
I had a calculator.
I said this to this old man a couple months ago. He said, these damn kids are so stupid. I said, if they stupid, why is it only old people who keep giving away their social security numbers to princes in Nigeria and falling for the go to the store and get Google cards and pay back the internet?
Good.
So we keep talking about common sense, but you'll see, I saw a girl, a teenager, stop an old lady in Walmart because she saw her buying a bunch of Google Play cards. And I was about to say something. And she said, ma'am, are you buying gift cards for your family? She's like, no. And she saw her on the phone. That's the telltale sign. She said, ma'am, it's a scam. She's like, what? Ma'am, no IRS is going to ask you to go to Food Lion or a grocery store and get gift cards to pay back your taxes.
That's pitiful.
Right? Well, it's not, but that's again
I hadn't heard that one. So
common.
I mean, I know they're smart with stuff like that. They hip and all that stuff. They got it going on. They know, but there's some things that even older people that we have that they just don't. They're lacking.
And what is that? What is that?
Sense. I mean,
no, that's not true. It's not true.
I mean, not necessarily like, not that they're dumb. I'm not saying that they're dumb, but
it's not true.
I'm not saying that they're stupid. Not they're not stupid. They're not dumb. But
I know
something is not there.
No, that's not
I had
true.
something I want to
It's
say to
not
that, but I'm
true.
just keep it to myself.
no, go ahead, Jay.
I'm not necessarily talking about your age group. Not necessarily your age group. I'm talking about coming up.
No,
I
it's not true.
I want Jay. What did you say? Say what it is you were afraid to say. I don't want to say. Go ahead.
So the sense says, compared to the rest of everybody else, they have sense. All right, I got something for that. If you got,
I didn't say you. I'm not talking about you. It does not apply to
Go
every.
ahead. No, you
It
said
doesn't apply
they.
to
Go
every
ahead.
child.
There's one of the
every
they
you.
right there. Go ahead, they.
You're doing the sweeping
you got
generalizations.
sense, I got dollars.
I'm sure. I'm not talking about every child. It's just that there's something that's missing. Even though we didn't have the computers, we didn't have all that fancy stuff that they have now. There's something else that we have that they just did not get.
And it's a lot of stuff that y'all have that they, but I still
and it's
don't
vice
know,
versa.
I still don't know what you mean by they don't. Again,
I was in junior high and high school with a bunch of mullet heads. I mean,
right. Y'all act like.
And Led Zeppelin was taking the world to hell, you know.
Right.
I mean, so
I'm not talking about knowledge. So y'all talking about knowledge.
No, we're not. No, we're talking about what? You know what? Common sense tells me, as the captain of the football team in the pick a decade, the 70s, not to grab what I think is a geek. Me and my friends grab him, turn him upside down, and put his head in the toilet. That's common sense. Common sense tells me not to do that. Common sense tells me that two people of different races should be able to drink out of the same water fountain. That's common sense to me. It's a lot of common sense things that are not done by every generation. And again, every generation is going to tell us what the next generation is lacking. And a lot of times it's just a narrative that's not true.
Yeah.
And we keep preaching that narrative that there's something wrong with these kids. Every generation, there's something wrong with these kids. They just don't have, because they're not forced to grow up a way that we had to. Then there's something missing. The beautiful thing, like, again, I'm saying, if your child questions you when you say go to bed or you got to eat this, that's different. That's defiance. But I love when I see parents and their kid ask a question and they don't just say, it is what it is, or it's because I said so. They actually explain it to them. They're getting explained things. They're being taught things. A lot of them have more common sense than me. A lot of them are good with their money. There are kids with bank accounts that control their own money. I didn't know how to control my own money until I was 30. So it's a narrative that it triggers me.
I can tell.
Because as a person who teaches kids all the time, I have more problems from my adults than I have my kids.
Yes, you do.
Common sense thing.
And I'm being serious. I can attest to that. Having watched you work and having worked with some of those same people, yeah, I think the adults are harder to work. And I'm not talking about an old guy like myself that just doesn't get things quick anymore. But the older one gets, the more stubborn one gets. And the more of a know-it-all they become. So, yeah, I've learned a lot in my association with John by being around people, and I've learned that the kids that he works with, at least, are all pretty good kids and pretty smart too.
Yeah, and then you know what? Well, also, you know what does play a part too. If you're a person that doesn't travel a lot, because every kid's not growing up the same. You know, when you're talking about a rural area versus a big city versus the hood versus the suburbs versus, there's a lot of different, and these things have always been like that. There's a lot of different things that are being taught at different levels. You know, they got this thing called country smart, you know, and city smart. And we keep, what is that? You know, country smart and
Ah,
city smart. Country smart. Okay, you know how many chickens
watch it
lay
now.
an egg in a
Watch.
day? I don't know. I'm just saying, you know.
Well, John, country smart would be my mom because she grew up on a farm. She learned stuff on a farm that a kid in the city would not know. She
Right.
did not learn stuff in the city, in Miami, in your case, that you would know. With that, that rural versus urban dichotomy, has always kind of been there. That tension has always kind of been
Well,
there.
I got lucky. I grew up in the city, but my grandparents were from Mississippi in Georgia, and my parents were raised by them. So I got raised a little country like in the city. It was very weird.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh, then you've got city smarts. Tell us about some of that.
It was very weird, and to the fact that, and all the people that I grew up around were like that. I didn't know that people kept their dogs in the house until I was an adult. When I went to someone's house and there was a dog in it, I lost my mind. I was like, "What's the dog doing in the house? There's an animal in the house." Because my grandfather had 6 dogs. They were in the backyard. You hated stepping in poop. They were in the backyard. My house, dogs are outside. My whole neighborhood, the dogs are outside. No one had dogs. Matter of fact, if you open the door, the dogs would run up because they know there's food coming, and they would stop right at the door and they knew not to come in. And so that was shocking to me, you know. That was shocking to me.
That's
But
funny.
okay, I don't want to go too far. I want to go back to, because we got like 7
Well,
minutes. Go back to what we were majorly talking about and get into some final thoughts on this topic. If parents should be responsible for their child's actions. I'll throw it back to you, to our wonderful host, Lisette.
all right. I mean, I just let's just do some final thoughts on it then. But you know what? Yeah, that too. Let's try off with Jackson. Jackson, go for it. What's your final thoughts on this?
I would say they should be held accountable to the extent of the situation in which has transpired, because it seems like, in hindsight, shouldn't you have taught your child about that? Oh, you did it, so you were being negligent. It's back and forth. So now you have to ask yourself the question of, are they to blame? Is the child to blame? Or is there a conversation to be had? Open up the conversation. Have the conversation. Make sure they understand the conversation.
Mark.
Well, I think I differ from Jackson a bit as far as the accountability of parents. I think that my threshold of holding a parent accountable for what a child does might be quite a bit higher than yours, Jackson. I think that if the in my view, the parent has to be clearly negligent or abusive, not just perhaps guilty of parenting faux pas, which we all are, but going to what we were talking about a while ago about how things are versus how things were. I think perspective, and I'm always been a history buff. I'm not a history major, but I'm always a history buff, and so it kind of gives me a better appreciation of the way things were in certain previous eras, my life and before. And a lot of the problems we talk about that we think are new, like John said, they're really not new. They may have some new dynamics to them or a new twist to them, but they said there's not been an original thought in a million years. And for that matter, there's not been an original problem in a million years. It just has a new face to it. I remember once I met a young woman once who, and this is quite some time ago, she had never subscribed to a newspaper in her life until she started reading the newspaper. And so she picks up a newspaper, and the first time she reads it, she thinks the world's going to hell because she's just not finding out how bad things are. So that's like, you get on your feed every morning, you say, oh, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. If you put that thing away, which I'm not saying you should, things aren't that bad. Put on a happy face.
Melvin, you want to go?
Yes. To what I kind of wedge in between Jackson and Mark with the accountability. I start feeling around 16. I'm a little less lenient on the parent because with a lot of kids, that's when kids start like breaking away and really molding into their own identity and who they're about to be for the next 4 or 5 years. And it's the most rebellious state. We all know it's happening. Yes, no, not every kid rebelled from their parents. But we also have to make sure we put tiers on this thing and understand that don't jump to conclusion when you see a kid do something, you automatically go, what the hell with the parents? Like, because we've seen some ideal situations that I would have loved to been in. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with this kid? And then we've seen some really bad and not ideal situations. More often than not, if it's not an ideal situation, it doesn't turn out great. There's outliers. I give the example all the time of if a boy grows up watching his dad beat his mom, there's no in between. One or two things usually happen. They become profoundly fond of women and nurture them because they saw what their mom went through, or they become abusers. They go one way or the other. There's no sometimey with that. And so understanding that knowing that when your child is showing you through their actions that there's something else going on, find out what's going on. Maybe they didn't just get in a fight in the 3rd grade because they're violent. Maybe something's going on and you need to get to the bottom of it.
Piggybacking on what you said, John, I agree. The parents have got to be more attentive to their children, and even though they may be 16, you still got to be snoop, kind of like a snoop. You still want to know what's going on in their life, what friends they're choosing to be around with, what they spend their time doing. You need to know that. And I don't think that's being snoopy by doing that. You need to know that. Also, I know up to a certain point, a parent should not be held accountable for what their child is doing. But at the same time, if they're in your household, if they're a part of your household, you have the responsibility to keep an eye on what they're doing. It's negligence to me if you're not. Of course, you can't see everything because kids are sneaky. They know how to hide things from you, but you can only do but so much. Do as much as you can to be a parent, and that's all you can do. And back at the bridge, under the boardwalk, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna love our children, and we're gonna make them do what they're supposed to do. Because that's what they're supposed to do.
Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Professor Mark here, Professor from ECU, is going to be on the conversation with Harold and Dave, and they're going to get more deep into this conversation because they're going to talk about gun control on our political and government talk show, The Conversation, at 1 p.m. So make sure you're joining with that. And you may also see him at 3 p.m. He'll be joining On the Count, which is a new show starting on Keone Productions. On the Count, hosted by the wonderful Pedro. He will be talking to people who have been in prison for long periods of times. I'm talking decades, 10 years, 15, 20, but they were innocent. And so he's going to talk about how life for them is when they come out, and also talk to prisoners that have recovered, ex-cons who have recovered and have been struggling to make a better life for themselves and not go back to where they started, and how that's a little difficult for them. So make sure you check those out. And just wanted to throw those in there. And we're going to end on Lisette, reminding y'all that Lisette said, these kids ain't got no damn sense.